Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Janarandana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Nandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Tiravanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotartha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotartha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 10th day of December 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are finishing up chapter 13 today, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. We're on text 35 on page 564. Chaitra Gayor Evam Antaram Jnana Chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param Chetra chetra gayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param Chetra chetra gayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha Bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param Chetra chetra gayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha Bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param Chetra chetra gayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param Chetra chetra gayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param Bhakta Chad
Chetra chetra gayorevam
Chetra chetra gayorevam
antaram jnana chakshusha
antaram jnana chakshusha
bhuta prakriti moksham cha
bhuta prakriti moksham cha
ye vidur yanti te param
ye vidur yanti te param Anyone else? Okay. Word by word, Chetra of the body, Chetra gayoho of the proprietor of the body, evam, thus antaram, the difference, jnana chakshusha, by the vision of knowledge, bhuta of the living entity, prakriti from material nature, moksham, the liberation, cha also, yea, those who, viduhu, know, yanti, approach, te, they, param, the supreme. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, those who see with eyes of knowledge the distance between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. Purport. The purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body, the owner of the body, and the supersoul. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in verses 8 through 12. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there is the soul, and there is also the supersoul. The soul and the supersoul are two. The material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul, and can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So, just to remind us, the Bhagavad Gita is divided into these three sections: the first 6 chapters, middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters. This is the first of the last 6 chapters. And if you study this chapter carefully, you see that many of these topics have been mentioned before, not in such a thorough degree. But Krishna, as he will in the next chapter, when he deals with the 3 modes of nature, which have also been mentioned before, he's expanding on the knowledge given in the previous chapters and giving us a chance to really deepen our understanding. So Arjuna starts with this question. He wants to know, my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge. So the Lord says, this body, O son of Kuntī, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. But then we get to the next verse, we said, but I'm also the knower. So it's not one knower, but 2 knowers. O Scion of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knowers is called knowledge. That is my opinion. That's one of the revisions we made here. The word is Chaitra Gyayohu, and I confirmed my Sanskrit advisor, Kishore Prabhu, who was one of the foremost students of Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu in his school. He passed away, unfortunately, 14 years ago. But that indeed, this combination Chaitra Gyayo can be either singular or plural. And it makes more sense that it's plural because one needs to know not only the individual knower, but we need to know about the super knower, right? And the super soul. So that's what the Krishna answers. The Supreme Lord, this body, O son of Kuntī, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. But then the 3rd verse he says, O Scion of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knowers is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So you've got 3 things. You've got the body, which is the field of activity. And then you have the individual knower and the supreme knower. Now, who is the real owner of the body? That's also a little debatable. Because Prabhupada sometimes talks about the individual soul as the owner of the body. But we're the owner of the body, just like you say, well, it's my apartment, but I know it's not really my apartment, right? I'm renting. So it's important that I not forget who really owns the apartment, otherwise I'll get into trouble. So similarly, we need to understand who really is the ultimate knower and controller and owner of our bodily apartment. This is like an apartment, eventually get evicted. We die. So that's Krishna's setting up the whole thing. And the real thing is, understand how the soul is interacting with the body. And in our conditioned state, we're identifying with the body as the self, and that's the first mistake. Until we identify as the soul, and that we have a body which we can utilize to get out of the imprisonment of the various bodies, in other words, to get liberation, going back to Godhead, then we're in different modes of nature, which we'll discuss in the next chapter, and we remain bound by this illusion of being the owner and enjoyer of this body, and then being frustrated again and again because ultimately the body breaks down, and everything that we planned and we hope to do in this body is completely destroyed. So this chapter is very illuminating. It'll describe what is the Prakriti, what is the Purusha, and I always go back to that key verse I think it's 22, because this is gives us the instruction that we are free actors. We have a certain amount of freedom. How we associate with the modes of nature makes all the difference with what our destiny is going to be. So just to skip to that verse, text 22 on page 553, Purusha. Now here the Purusha refers to the soul, the living entity who's taken the role of an enjoyer, but is actually ultimately not the supreme enjoyer. But this is the conditioned soul. It's called the Purusha. Purusha prakatisto hi bhunkte prakati jan gunan karanang gunasangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life. This is the conditioned soul, experiencing the three modes of nature, not always enjoying them. It's just enjoying. But the word bhunkte can mean experiencing. I think we changed that also. Yeah. Experiencing the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Now, knowing when we are infused with this kind of knowledge, we should develop our intelligence, strengthen it, so that we can control how we associate with the modes of nature. In other words, we want to get established in the mode of goodness, where knowledge expands and where we can become enlightened. If we're controlled by the modes of passion and ignorance, then we're going to be always trying to enjoy and try to avoid suffering. You know, that's the idea, to rise up to the mode of goodness. So, and that makes all the difference. Due to our association with the material nature, the different modes, prakriti, there's guna, right? Guna sangha, how we associate with those modes. Thus one meets with good and evil among various species. So it all comes down, and this is what's so, how shall I say, inspiring about the philosophy, is that it's in our hands. Our destiny is really in our hands. And we're armed with the knowledge, in other words, when we're understanding who we are, what the world is, and what different kind of actions produce as results, and how we can break free from our previous reactions, then we're on the path. We're on the path out of this material world back to the spiritual world. It may take more than one life because we're so conditioned, unless we've been practicing from birth and like that. But that doesn't matter. In other words, the important thing is to get going on the path, be serious about it, make as much advancement as possible, and then leave it up to Krishna, to give us a chance in the next life or take us back to Godhead. So this chapter is very illuminating, and the next one also. All these latter chapters, they all have a special character. Three modes of nature, and then chapter 15 with the upside down banyan tree, beginning the chapter showing that everything is topsy-turvy in this world. In other words, it's all reversed, and we need to cut off that entanglement with this banyan tree of the material world by the process of detachment, by the sword of detachment. But that can only come when we have corresponding attachment to Krishna and things related to Krishna. So it's all a very nice science, and Prabhupada so beautifully explains it. All right, we ready to go dive into the next chapter? Okay. Beginning chapter 14, entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature, text number 1, page 567. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Padam Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yagyadva Muniyak Sarve Munaya Sarve Padam Siddhim Mitogataha. Could you turn the heat off? Thank you. Okay, translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection." Purport. From the 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, so Prabhupada is now reviewing, and we can go back to the middle 6 chapters. From the 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, Sri Krishna in detail reveals the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the Lord himself is further enlightening Arjuna. I think that comma should probably go. Now the Lord himself is further enlightening Arjuna. If one understands this chapter through the process of philosophical speculation, he will come to an understanding of devotional service. In the 13th chapter, it was clearly explained that by humbly developing knowledge, one may possibly be freed from material entanglement. It has also been explained that it is due to association with the modes of nature that the living entity is entangled in this material world. He's referring to that verse we went over. Purusha Prakati Stohi. Now, in this chapter, the Supreme Personality explains what those modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how one can transcend them and attain liberation. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transferred to the spiritual world. The Lord now explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far, far superior to all other processes of knowledge thus far explained, and knowing this, many attain perfection. Anyway, thus it is expected that one who understands this 14th chapter will attain perfection. Well, this is what an inducement to keep on reading, right? All right, let's go on. Idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharm yamagataha sarge pinopajayante pralayena vitanticha. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. Purport. After acquiring perfect transcendental knowledge, one acquires qualitative equality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, becoming free from the repetition of birth and death. One does not, however, lose his identity as an individual soul. It is understood from Vedic literature that the liberated souls who have reached the transcendental planets of the spiritual sky always look to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, being engaged in his transcendental loving service. So even after liberation, the devotees do not lose their individual identities. Generally, in the material world, whatever knowledge we get is contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Knowledge which is not contaminated by the three modes of nature is called transcendental knowledge. As soon as one is situated in that transcendental knowledge, he is on the same platform as the Supreme Person. Those who have no knowledge of the spiritual sky hold that after being freed from the material activities of the material form, this spiritual identity becomes formless without any variegatedness. However, just as there is material variegatedness in this world, in the spiritual world there is also variegatedness. Those in ignorance of this think that spiritual existence is opposed to material variety. But actually, in the spiritual sky, one attains a spiritual form. There are spiritual activities, and the spiritual situation is called devotional life. That atmosphere is said to be uncontaminated, and there one is equal in quality with the Supreme Lord. To obtain such knowledge, one must develop all the spiritual qualities. One who thus develops the spiritual qualities is not affected either by the creation or by the destruction of the material world. Okay, but let me put this back on because this is the next. Too hot, too cold, dualities. Eventually we have to transcend them. I already have a cold, so I don't want to aggravate it. Okay. So one who would, let's see, did we do two already? We did two. Two is finished, yeah. So this is a very great encouragement to study this chapter. And you can see how it's naturally following the last chapter. We have to become determined to, move up the scale on the modes of nature, because this environment we're in, the Kali Yuga, this, this stage of the Kali Yuga. The modes of passion and ignorance are very strong. It's rare to find someone who's truly in the mode of goodness, very reflective and, like that. And so we need to consciously maintain that in our lives and live on that platform, because in the mode of goodness, you can reflect on these things. The mode of goodness means you're not being pulled and pushed so powerfully by the senses and the mind. That's what the mode of passion means. We read, we've already studied that. It's like, Dhyayato Vishayan Pungsa, Sangasteshu Bhajayate. This is in the second chapter. This is how everyone is getting entangled more and more. Dhyayato, becoming absorbed. This electronic world we've been living in for so long, It's just, like I experience it all the time on my walk. I learn so much on my walk, I feel like I'm in the 11th canon. The Bhagavad Gita. Have you ever read the Bhagavad Gita? Krishna's instructions to Uddhava in the 11th. So he begins with this whole instruction about how much you can learn from nature. There's so many different examples. So I'm just seeing how, because I make it a point, because Prabhupada did it on his morning walk, He would always try to say good morning to everyone, so at least they interact and there's some positive, he doesn't expect that he's going to start preaching to them, on his morning walk. But he did that. In fact, I remember when Bhaktisundar Swami was here, he described some of Prabhupada's visit to Mexico and Venezuela, and how when he's on the morning walk in the first morning walk in Mexico, people are saying buenos dias, not good morning. So Prabhupada learned that. What are they saying? So buenos dias, Prabhupada. So okay, so next time he would say buenos dias, because he wants to relate, them to relate to him. So anyway, I try to say good morning to everybody. But half the people, young, old, doesn't matter. They got the buds, they're on the phone, whatever. So they're not really there, And even they avoid eye contact because they're talking to somebody, so they don't want to be. So I don't try to, say good morning to those people. But there are many others, mostly dog walkers, because they have to pay attention to the dogs, so they're not. And they give them a good morning, and most of the people respond. Sometimes there's a coffee house they open, a new coffee house, and it opens at 7 in the morning. So they're always getting, I'm there at 6:40, every day. So they're always working inside. So they have these doors, and when they're open, then it's always ladies who are there, and I say, good morning. I said, oh, good morning. It's like a whole thing. But sometimes it's so cold, they close it up, and I can't really interact. So the point is that I'm trying to break through, so that there's a little interaction, there's a little recognition, because I think they know, I'm a Hare Krishna. So I rarely say Hare Krishna to people because, it may alienate them or whatever. I'm trying to recruit them. No, I'm just Hare Krishna, like the normal people, Hare Bol, or good morning. So it's like that it's a moment to moment thing with the material energy challenging us both internally and externally, because we're always waking up and we have a certain mentality, a certain mood, a certain mode that we've developed. So to be conscious means to use the knowledge that we learned from Bhagavad Gita. So what's the best way in which I can now, at this point, use my time to progress in Krishna consciousness, to get a routine going, so there's time in the morning, and a place so that you can chant and do everything. It's all very systematic. So now we're going to hear this very important information about the three modes of nature, what they are and how they affect, and what the effects are, and how you can recognize it in your own life and how in others, and what you want to choose in order to cultivate the mode of goodness, which is a good platform for developing spiritual life. So this chapter is very key. Did we do 2? We're on 2. We're on 3. 3. Mama yone mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadamyaham sambhavak sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. The total material substance, called Brahman, is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Purport. Now, and then I think it's the next verse where he's saying that I am the father of all living beings. This is an explanation of the world. Everything that takes place is due to the combination of Kshetra and Kshetragya. So he's referring back to the previous chapter. The body and the spirit soul. This combination of material nature and the living entity is made possible by the Supreme God Himself. The Mahatattva is the total cause of the total cosmic manifestation. And that total substance of the material cause, in which there are three modes of nature, is sometimes called Brahman. The Supreme Personality impregnates that total substance, and thus innumerable universes become possible. This total material substance, the Mahatattva, is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad 1.1.9. Tasmad etad Brahma nama rupam annam chajayate. The Supreme Person impregnates that Brahman with the seeds of the living entities. The 24 elements, beginning from earth, water, fire, and air, are all material energy, and they constitute what is called Mahad Brahma, or the great Brahman, the material nature. As explained in the 7th chapter, beyond this there is another superior nature, the living entity. Into material nature, the superior nature is mixed by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thereafter all living entities are born of this material nature. The scorpion lays its eggs in piles of rice, and sometimes it is said that the scorpion is born out of rice, but the rice is not the cause of the scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of the living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they only seem to come out as products of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to his past activities, has a different body, created by this material nature, so that the entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past deeds. The Lord is the cause of all the manifestations of living entities in this material world. And one thing that's constantly reiterated is that there's no point in this process, in everyone's particular lifetime, in every living entity's lifetime, that there's no control or observation by the Supreme Soul, the Super Soul. Right? Whether it's a little ant or a cat or a human being or Brahma, the Super Soul is there directing and fulfilling the results of the previous activities. Now, I remember when the 9th canto came out, and everyone had to deal with this new understanding that every living entity who we see in all these different myriad bodies, was once a Brahma. And how to compute with that? I mean, Brahma is millions and billions of years old, and Brahma generally takes the role of a creator of a universe, but not all Brahmas go back to Godhead, obviously. Otherwise, how could we all be previously Brahmas? But it just boggles the mind. It's one of the amazing things that we had, as you're reading the Bhagavatam, you get to the 5th canto. Whoa, this is the way the universe is set up. But the idea is that our Brahma, the Brahma of this universe, he's the head of our sampradaya. Krishna's the head, but then he learns from Brahma. Brahma teaches Brahma, and Brahma creates everything. And he teaches Narada, Narada teaches Vyasa, and the knowledge comes down. So this Brahma is going back to Godhead, you see. But not every soul in Brahma Loka is going with him. That's explained. Brahma Bhuvana Loka, there's the verse in the 7th chapter, I believe, that from Brahma Loka down to Patala Loka, all are places of return. In other words, Brahma Loka is not the spiritual world. You can also come down from there. So it depends on what you do in Brahma Loka. If you're advancing in devotional service, so that by the time the dissolution comes, which is millions and billions of years, that you actually get promoted to the spiritual world. And since our Brahma is going back because then he will take many of the residents there, but not all of them. Some will fall down. They're not all pure devotees in the Brahmaloka. So, but the knowledge of just how things are set up, how we all have a chance. This is what's so wonderful about Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's not barred to anyone. Depending on what you do starting now, and I've seen so many, people come and go from this movement actually. It's just a fact. That to really stay with it year after year and undergo the changes and the commitments and to stay with the understanding that you're not going to be part of this whole endeavor to try to enjoy in the material world. Your enjoyment is going to come from another place. And if you do it right, Krishna consciousness, you will feel that every day. That there's a connection with Krishna, that the process of devotional service makes you more peaceful and joyful, and it's exciting. If you commit offenses and you slack in the sadhana, then it becomes very difficult to prevent the material energy from taking you. And usually what happens is that you become offensive. You become offensive to other devotees. And as soon as that happens, then it becomes impossible to stay in the association. There's some reason you want to leave, And I've seen that so many times. So this periodic and this regular cultivating in the knowledge and really filling our intelligence with all of these truths it increases the strength of the intelligence. I always love that verse. You probably heard me because I quote it so often in these classes, where Lord Chaitanya is teaching Sanatana Goswami, and it's divided into three portions. It's the Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. So this is the beginning of the Abhideya. Abhideya means the practice. He's teaching the practice. So he starts with this verse. Kamadinam katina katita pavita dhurni deshas tesham jata mayna karuna nattapano upashanti utsrijaitan hatayadabate sampatam labdha buddhis Tvamayata kshadanamabayam mamna yungsvatmadase. Such an important verse. So first he says, I put it in a poem, in how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. And that's a very important verse, because that's what we're trying to do. By these classes, by studying, by contemplating these truths and living them, we're trying to increase the strength of our intelligence, our spiritual intelligence. Because, what does Krishna say at the end of the 3rd chapter? Arjuna asks, what is it, O Krishna? Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichanna vivarshnaya balari vinayojita. What is it that seems to force us to act in ways against our own interest? Atakena prayuktoyam papam, sinfully, papam charati purusha, anichan, as if against our own will. This verse always made me think of the people I interacted with who became addicts. Whether alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be, And it's not just that. Gambling can be is just as addictive as cocaine. Something or other gets you, and you're in the grip of that. And, you're not free. You need someone to help you and practically take you physically away from it, And so Krishna answers, Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajoguna samudbhava, Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyanami Havaidinam. Here's your real enemy, not the enemies over there. It's the enemies in here. It says it's lust, Arjuna, which transformed into wrath. Wrath is like uncontrollable anger, Kamesha Krodha Rajoguna Samudma, arising from the mode of passion. Mahashano Mahapapma, the all-devouring sinful enemy in this world. Mahashano Vidyanami Havaidinam. This is your real enemy, not those enemies over there. It's inside. So then he talks about how you have to strengthen the intelligence to control the lower self by the higher self. Because the mind and senses are going to want to do their thing, you know. But you have to say no, directing their attention, it's all intention, directing their mind to devotional service, to chanting Hare Krishna, not to do some nonsense, you know. So it's a moment-to-moment thing, and we're surrounded by all of this mode of passion and mode of ignorance, very, very strong. So we need the greater strength, the spiritual strength that's provided from sadhana bhakti, the chanting, especially the chanting the holy name. Getting the higher taste, you know, it's so scientific. You get the higher taste and you can get rid of the lower taste. Remember, I don't know if I was trying to remember the context of this verse. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. Mukta sangha means to be free of the attachment. Mukta sangha, of material attachment. So this is in the context of the second chapter, first canto, which I often refer to, Prabhupada quote these verses. And it's a whole lesson. It's a self-contained lesson in bhakti. And it's all keys on developing the desire and the taste for hearing about Krishna. You know, right near the beginning, he says, what's real dharma? The sages in Naimisharanya, they ask Sutta Goswami, what is that supreme dharma by which the soul can actually become peaceful and happy in this world? Okay, so he answers the famous verse, Savai Pangsang Paro Dharma Yato Bhaktir Hokshaje Ahaitu Kya Pratayata Yed Masu Prasidati. That dharma which produces or develops your natural bhakti for Krishna, and he uses the word adhokshaja. You know, when you get into it, every word is important. That he chose that word. Adhokshaja is a name for Krishna. It's not a Leela name. It's not a name that they chant in Vrindavan. It simply means he who is transcendental. Adha akshaja. Akshaja means that which is born from the eyes or from the other senses. That knowledge which is ascending. You know, it's the ascending form of knowledge, which doesn't get us anywhere. So Krishna pushes that down. Adha means down. He's transcendental to that knowledge. You can't know him by that kind of knowledge. But you have to have faith in him and develop the bhakti, even though you can't see him with your present senses. So how do you develop the faith? By cultivating the knowledge of him and associating with those who know him, who have experience. That's why association through Prabhupada's books with a pure devotee who is experiencing, he has a vigyan, not just now, but vigyan, direct experience moment to moment of the truth of these things. Then that can induce faith, so that even though we can't see Krishna directly, we still have faith that we'll chant his name and progress. And that's why, Krishna is so wonderful, because he is accessible. He's accessible for the name, and also, the deities and the devotees and the prasadam and all these things, you can directly perceive Krishna. And you can get the benefit of developing the attraction for Krishna through the holy name and through all these things. And that attraction proportionally will decrease your material attraction. And that's using the intelligence to choose those things which increase that attraction, rather than letting yourself be controlled by the material energy, is the whole process of sadhana bhakti. And that's our real challenge. So when you strengthen your intelligence, that's what he said, my intelligence is now awakened, and so I'm rejecting these hellish desires that I've been serving birth after birth, and that have been, tormenting me. That's the whole kama adina. Kama adina is kama, etc. Kama, krodha, lobha, those forces. Katina katita, how many different ways? When I read this verse, I first thought of movies I saw as a kid. Slave ships. Where there's these guys with the whips, and there's the other guys pulling the things. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's what it is. We're the slaves, and our ship is our own body, But we're being controlled by these forces of nature that we've allowed to control us. But we're not slaves. We have a certain amount of freedom, and Krishna comes personally, or he sends his emissaries, or he leaves his book to give us the clue how we can break free from that slavery to our lower self. That's what's going on. So this whole chapter, the modes of nature, is so important, because that's how the material energy controls us, through these modes of nature. Okay, now text 4. This is the famous verse. Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtayak sambhavantiya Tasam Brahma Mahajonir Aham Bija Pradakpita. This is the famous I am the father of all verse. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kuntī, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Purport. In this verse it is clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original father of all living entities. The living entities are combinations of the material nature and the spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet, but on every planet, even on the highest where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth there are living entities, even within water and within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother material nature and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purport is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deeds. So this is a big picture of how the creation works. And we don't know how many times we've been coming into this material world and living for millions of years and then being absorbed back into Garbhodakshay Vishnu for who knows how long. So this is the process, that has conditioned us, but we have a method of counteracting it that's practical. We see it's worked and we have faith that it works. And so we should develop that, strong desire. This is sometimes confusing because ultimately we don't want liberation, right? That's Lord Chaitanya's teaching. Nadanam jananam sundarim. I don't want money. I'm not praying to you for money, for prestige, for a beautiful wife, whatever. Birth after birth. I simply want your service, meaning I don't want liberation. So he's teaching us, what not to pray for. Nadanam, najanam, nasan. Then what do we pray for? We pray for service. We pray for the strength to practice devotional service and become steady in your service. And we can also pray for the taste. There's a nice, so many beautiful verses in the writings of the Goswamis. How's it go? Purushasya prakriti. Purushottamasya padito gokula charitamate nakutasheka prema madandasyandam tanotamama chittamakanda. He compares his mind to a mango tree. So he says, may the mango tree of my mind always be sprinkled with the nectar of Krishna's Gokula pastimes, the most attractive pastimes, And then the tree will sprout, not just with mangoes, but with the flowers of mangoes, and from which will trickle the nectar, flower nectar of pure love for Krishna, like that. But he has this image. But so it's a prayer. In other words, may I be able to hear those pastimes. May I have the association of devotees who relish them, so I can hear them. And that kind of prayer reminds of Kunti's famous prayer. Just when Krishna's leaving, the battle of Kurukshetra is over, they won, but she says, well, let those dangers happen again and again, because when we had all those troubles, we'd see you all the time. Now you're going back, we won't see you anymore, So, but then she says, Tvayame ananya vishaya mati madhupate asukrit ratamun bhataradha gange bhaugumadanvati. O Madhu's Lord, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. So we can pray like that, And then when we get an opportunity to fill our minds with Krishna thought, we should take it. Chanting Hare Krishna, reading about Krishna, hearing about Krishna. So that's so here he's telling, this is a very important verse, that we're all his sons, we're all and daughters, living entities. In other words, we're all children of Krishna, children of God. And we're wayward. We've wandered away from the safety and the joy and of the spiritual world, our real home. And we've been wandering around this material energy for so long, forgetting him. So Krishna is making this effort. He comes here. How often does he come? Once in the day of Brahma? Once every 8 billion, 400 million years or something, you know? Because the word day, they mean 12 hours. So there's also that whole night, you know, when Brahma is sleeping. But it's been a long time since Krishna came, but now it's 5,000 years. That's nothing. You know, he says yesterday. So and then he came again as Lord Chaitanya just, 2 minutes ago, relatively speaking. So we have a great opportunity. We're very fortunate, actually. You know, we should say, we're so fortunate to have proximity to the Lord's presence here and His movement, which, let's face it, you read the history of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and how it practically was eclipsed in India, over the years, but he revived it, and of course Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada. So all their efforts culminate in our opportunity to actually revive our actual nature. And we should be determined to get out of here. That determination, what is that famous verse? The greed, you have to have greed. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati kriyatam yadikutopi labhyate tatta laulyam abimulyam ekalam janmakoti sukatayana labhyate. This is sometimes ascribed to Rupa Goswami, but it's in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but he's quoting it from Ramananda Roy, where I think he chants this verse in their chapter 8, Madhya Lila, in their conversation. So a very important verse. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati. Prabhupada took that first line and he made the phrase Krishna consciousness out of it. Yeah. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati means the mind absorbed in Krishna bhakti rasa, Krishna consciousness. Kriyatam yadikatopi labhyate. You should buy it, if you can find it in the marketplace, but you have to have the right price. What is the price? Tatta laulyam abimulyam ekalam. The one and only mulyam ekalam is your greed for it, your desire for it. Tatta laulyam abimulyam ekalam. Janma koti sukatayana labhyate. You can practice pious activities for millions of births, you'll never get it. So how to develop that ardent desire to be Krishna conscious? That's the key. And the only way is through, initially, of course, through association with those who are already enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness. I remember, I'll tell you a little story from my sojourn. I had my job in the hospital, and I was doing yoga, and I was getting interested in Krishna consciousness. I was chanting a couple of rounds a day, And I was living just a few blocks from, actually about a mile or so from where my parents lived. I had my own place and a regular job. But I didn't have a TV, and I rarely wanted to see TV. I said, let me go see if I can watch a little TV, So I turned on the TV, black and white, no color. And there was this program, you can see it, it's on YouTube. David Susskind visiting with the Hare Krishna devotees in the New York area, which meant the Brooklyn Temple. And there was some who came from other places because there was a lot of devotees. And I recognized a couple of them because I'd already visited a couple of times. But it was just amazing. He asked, every devotee was very articulate. The ladies, including the ladies, he would ask, what about this, what about that? And they would give a little talk, and and then he asked them for a demonstration of a kirtan. Then they all stood up and they had a kirtan for about 5, 6, 8, 10 minutes. He was, I think, more than he attended. And it was just so attractive. All the devotees were very attractive, very sattvic, very sure of themselves, very joyful, clear, everything. And by that show, I became more interested in going and visiting the temple. It was just an example of how Krishna consciousness spread. By the association of Prabhupada, a few fortunate souls became enlivened to practice, and they in turn became enlivened and able to attract others. Even when Prabhupada left for the West Coast, they continued on in New York. So that's the wonderful way in which it's contagious in a good sense. Krishna consciousness. So we should become infected, with Krishna consciousness really strongly, and also help others to be Krishna conscious. Those who are close to, we can influence, and who else? And Krishna will be very pleased with that, and it'll make us more enthusiastic. That's how it works. Okay, I'm getting a little carried away. So we're getting to the time when we're going to do our little kirtan. But I wanted to share. I forgot to bring something, but I will for next Monday. There's a poem I wrote based on the Madhurashtaka, I think by Madhvacharya, is it? I forget. But it says, Madhurati Patera Kilam Madhuram. I don't know if you know that. You know that? Madhurati Patera Kilam Madhuram. The king of sweet is completely sweet, you know. And so one verse goes, his lips are sweet, your smile is sweet, his lotus eyes and face are sweet. I think it's you. Your lips are sweet, your smile is sweet, your lotus eyes and face is sweet. Your heart is sweet, your heart is sweet, your name is sweet, O king of sweet, you're sweet complete. And it's very easy to write it because every line ends in sweet. You don't have to worry about this is rhyme, you know. So anyway, I have a whole thing that goes through, and I had written it, and one friend, she suggested, this is a lady who was learning about shlokas in Mayapur when I was there, and she suggested, well, you should go through all Krishna's Leela, you know, the baby Leela and the friend Leela, and then you know, parental and the Sakya Rasa and all the different rasas. So I did it. It's about 20, 30 verses. So next time we have a class, I'll bring that and I'll read that. It's very good. You know, it's easy to follow and remember. And so that's a way of meditating on Krishna. But now we have time for one or two verses. So let's see. Here's a nice one you probably haven't heard for a while. Let's see if I can remember it. Smita duchi makadanda syandi bhakta aravindam tavapada patahangsan vishtagandham mukunda vidachata pashupari netra sarangarangam mamadidiyata dhage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus, which does ere their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. And now we can look forward to seeing Giridhari's beautiful lotus face. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.